So the last survival signal in the gift of fear, which is number 7, is discounting the word no. Okay, now what he talks about here is he specifically talks about if a man is ignoring or discounting the concept of no. No is a word that must not be negotiated because the person who chooses not to hear it is trying to control you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this, I personally, this one hits me really hard because through my childhood, the culture and the adults in my life, they actually conditioned me that my no isn't valid. And then when you say no, they go like this, why? And then the why is like, well, why do I need to tell you? Because are you now going to argue with me that my reason for saying no isn't valid in your eyes?
Yeah.
So this one hits me hard. Okay, so declining to hear the no is a signal that someone is either seeking to control you or refusing to relinquish control. So that's an interesting one. So this is usually if a dog trainer is being really pushy.
Yeah.
You know, especially when it comes to selling your services. You know, I hate it when I walk up and the salesperson comes to me and they keep pushing me.
Yeah.
You know, like, here's 2 programs, this one, you know, or here's 2 products. No, I don't want that one. Yeah, but you see, this one would be really, like, that just to me is disrespect, and you just know.
Yeah.
So when I talk to people and I'm like, look, here are the options, I know what it's going to turn out like if you choose this and if you choose that. However, you make the choice.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if clients are making a choice and then it turns out to be more detrimental to what they want, that is their risk that they carry. That is not our responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is such an important thing for me to remember.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm like, I forget that I have to let them make mistakes because it's part of the process. They are paying me for it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's their risk.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing to understand. Now, negotiations are about possibilities, and providing access to someone who makes you apprehensive is not a possibility you want to keep on the agenda. This, for example, for me as well, comes in when your intuition talks about danger. No, come on in, the dog won't bite you. No.
Yeah.
So if they negotiate with you, what they're telling me here is they don't respect my safety. So if I say no, I will not come in until you put that dog away. That is non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very, very, very important. No, the guy says here, remember that no is a complete sentence. No, period, done. And I think especially for young dog trainers, if your instincts are telling you, I'm going to get bitten, or this isn't a good idea, no. And I have said to people, I don't know why I'm telling you no, but my instincts are telling me this is not a good idea, and I can't quite rationalize it, so I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So interesting.
Well, I mean. So, talking here more in terms of a predatory criminal specifically, right? So, here's the thing. The predatory criminal of every variety is looking for someone who will allow him to be in control, and just as he's constantly giving signals, so does he reap them. And that's the same with clients and yourself. You're giving signals, but you're also reading them.
Yeah.
Okay. But for a predator, and I like this where he says, a woman alone who needs assistance is actually far better off choosing someone and asking for help as opposed to waiting for an unsolicited approach. I think that's very important because a predator who's kind of looking out to suss out like who's the weakest one,
yeah.
you know, the chances of you asking that person is very rare.
Yeah.
Right? And if a man approaches you and you're like, oh, and you're like, no, thank you, that a man who genuinely had good intentions, no problems.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they'll be angry and they're like, okay, fine, and they walk away. But it's the other one's like, no, come on, like, you know, and then they try and manipulate you to negotiate your no. That's a guy you need to be careful of. I do like this. He says, I encourage women to ask other women for help when they need it. So if you're, you know, in a, you know, you're loading groceries and you're kind of, or, you know, struggling or to carry it, So I have to say, like, if I see a lady struggle, I actually do offer them a lot of times to carry.
Yeah.
You know. So he says here, the men so those times that men refuse to hear the word no, and that is not chivalrous, it's dangerous. So a guy who refuses to, if you're saying no, I don't want to come in, no, I don't want you to come in, no, I want you to go, no, I don't need help carrying my groceries. If that guy is trying to negotiate for you, that right there is a warning sign and a red flag. Same for me now. So the moment I talk to someone and they ask me a question, I go, you know, like, let's say they ask me a favor, like my family would go, you know, can you help me with this? And I go, no. The moment they're like, why not? I'm very suspicious. But if someone else asks, if someone says to me no, I'm very rarely nosy. Sometimes I'll go, why is that? Like, what's your thinking process behind this that made you choose that choice? Because then I want to know the process that I can use for the future. Like, why are you picking this car and not that one? So you said no to that one, but why is that? Like, what is it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So you got to think about if someone's trying to negotiate you or no, they're disrespecting you. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And it's all about what they want. So as a dog trainer, if I tell my client, if your intuition says to you, no, I'm the expert, I know that. However, I trust your intuition. If it's an emotional thing, we're like, oh, you know, I don't feel, I want to do this.
How do you know that they're going off of intuition and not emotion?
I build enough trust for my, like, I listen to my clients and I'll ask them more questions, like, you know, and they feel comfortable for me to go no, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if they do say that, I will say to them, if you're saying that there's something not right about this, okay, and then we'll weigh up the pros and cons and the cost-benefit analysis. So if they're going to do it, is it dangerous? Yes. Okay, don't do it. So if it's not dangerous but inconvenient, then I'm like, perhaps, how about you try it for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Right. That's different. But if someone says to me, well, I'd walk in a park and go, you can let them off if you like, and they say, no, you see that dog, I don't like that look at the dog. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't look at the dog and go, no, we'll be fine. It's in here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you got to think about skin in the game. Again, like, if your client says no and you start to, you know, like with a certain tool, if they're like no, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I then have the choice to either continue training with them with whatever tools they want, or I can go, you know what, I'm not the trainer for you.
Yeah, okay.
But what I do not do is push them.
Yeah.
Because to me, this is what it feels like. I know what it feels like when someone makes your no feel invalid. It's not a nice feeling. Especially with the people that I work with that are in NDIS. If they say no to me and they can't explain it, I respect that.
Yeah.
Because they might just not be able to put these feelings into words.
Yeah.
And they might have seen something subconsciously that I now can't see.
Right.
So, because at the end of the day, especially if it's with clients and their dogs, they are making a lot of the decisions, so they cop the consequences.
Yes, it's not on you.
It's not on me. And it's the same for me. So if I say to someone, don't bring that dog in, right, and they're like, no, I'm going to, I'll be like, all right, give me a moment for me to just move away. If they're like, no, it'll be fine. The moment someone says that, and that's what I say to my clients, if you're walking and someone's like, oh, is your dog friendly? Can my dog say hi? And you're like, no, and they're like, no, it'll be okay. Right there, that there is a problem. Your job is protecting yourself and your dog. And if your instincts say don't do it, you remember, rudeness is relative, and you might never meet that person again. But if your dog goes through 3 or 4 or 5 attacks, you're the one that's copying that. And guess what happens? Sometimes those dogs end up in rescues. And what happens? Someone like you and me have to try and figure it out. And eventually what happens? We might have to put the dog down because we don't have the resources.
Yeah.